Now, as it turns out, one of the main reasons for externalities is because of a lack of clearly defined property rights. Okay, so think about this with regard to cigarette smoke. Um, who owns the fresh air or the air in your vicinity that you're breathing? Nobody owns it. Nobody has a legal claim to the ownership of the air around you, right? Which is why someone can just smoke a cigarette and the secondhand smoke wafts into your space and you breathe it in and smell that bad smell, right? In addition to maybe taking on some negative health effects. So you can see there's an example of where there aren't clearly defined property rights. Now, if you had clearly defined property rights of the air around you, suppose that there, in a 2-foot radius around you, you could claim property rights to the air around you, and that cigarette smoke wafted into your area that you had property rights over. Well, if you had property rights over that and that happened, you could sue the person whose secondhand smoke came into your bubble, right? In which case they would take much greater caution to not let that happen. Okay, but because there's no such property rights, it's very common and easy for secondhand smoke to come into your area, right? So what do we mean by property rights? Just the ability to exercise control over a resource, right? Whoever is the owner, they can control that resource. So basically, that gives us this idea of private property, right? Exclusive right or of ownership that allows the use and exchange of the property. Okay, so I'm sure most of you're all familiar with property rights. It's a huge part of capitalism is private property. So I'm sure these aren't new ideas to you. So what is it about property rights? What do they provide incentives to do, right? Well, they provide incentives to maintain. And if you have ever rented an apartment or a house, you might be aware of this, right? The landlord has a high incentive to maintain the property, whereas you don't because you're not the owner. There's an incentive to protect your property, right? So putting up fences or bearing arms, right? Weapons. There's an incentive to conserve as well, right? So not simply use up as quickly as possible. Whereas, right, with this one, I always think of public toilet paper in public bathrooms, right? When I'm at home, I use as little toilet paper as I can, basically, like just the bare minimum that I need. But when I'm in a public bathroom, I just pull a ton of TP out and wrap it up, and I've got a huge wad. So there you go, an incentive to conserve. And then the last one, an incentive to trade with others, right? So if you own the property, then if you come across any potential transactions or trades that would benefit you, you can engage in those, right?